Chapter 2, Zarathustra and his mission, Life of Zarathustra. One might say we know very little about the facts surrounding the life of the prophet Zarathustra. However, if we stop and realize the man lived as many as 4,000 years ago, we know very much indeed. We have words that he himself composed. We know of his family and some of his activities. This knowledge was all handed down orally for many centuries before it was written down. The linguistic fact that the nature of the language used by Zarathustra comes from the time around the early part of the middle of the second millennium BCE shows better than anything else that he lived at this time. The fact that we know he was a real living man, that he have his own words, and that the essence of his message has come down to us in pure form is a testimony to the extraordinary power. No man who lived so long ago has had the ability to speak to us in the here and now so clearly and forcefully. What is the explanation for this extraordinary personal ability? Tradition holds that Ahura Mazda constantly sent the Kavar, glory, of the prophet-to-be into the hearth fire of his maternal grandfather. For there it entered his grandmother's body, and from her it entered his mother's body, where it dwelled. Her name was Dugdova. Demons attempted to kill her because they recognized the wise Lord's plan to cause a prophet of the good religion to be engendered in the world. Dugdova's father sent her away for her protection to the house of the chief of the Shpitaman family. There she met the son of the chief, Purishaspa, and eventually married him. At that time, the Kavar entered Purishaspa as well. In a sacred ritual, Purishaspa and Dugdova drank the juice of the Hayoma plant mixed with the milk. At that point, the Kavar came together with the Fravashi, guardian spirit, and Tanu, physical form, of the prophet-to-be in his mother's womb. Again, the demons tried to kill him and his mother, but they were warded off. When Dugdova made offerings of wood, butter, and meat to the hearth fire, henceforth she was surrounded by radiance, which protected her from all attacks. When Zarathustra was born, he laughed out loud. Most babies cry because they are caused to see their own immortality, an illusion sent by the lie. But Zarathustra saw the truth and reacted with joy. All indications are that the place of Zarathustra's birth was somewhere around the Aral Sea. In ancient Indo-European society, it is normal for families to foster their children out to be raised early on by others. Purishaspa, temporarily afflicted by bad judgment, fosters Zarathustra out to a priest who reportedly tried to kill the little fellow. But in every instance, the boy was protected by divine power. Throughout his boyhood, Zarathustra spoke out against what he saw as bad practices. The fact that he later refers to himself as having been a priest Zayatar, and that he was in fact able to compose verse in the style and language of the ritual conventions of the Indo-European cult show that he was actually trained as a priest in the tradition against which he would formally and consciously rebel. This training would have been taking several years to complete. When he was 15 years old, Zarathustra asked for his share of his father's cord of girdle Kushti, symbolizing his inheritance from his father. The Zarathustra tied around his waist as he was instructed by the good mind Vohumana. Tradition holds that when Zarathustra was 20 years old, he left his parents' home to search for the truth. He wandered throughout the countryside for many years. It is said that Zarathustra married and had children. During the spring festival in his 30th year, Zarathustra went to the river Daityao to draw water for the strength-giving Hayoma ritual. On the banks of the river, where there appeared to Zarathustra the shining form of the good mind of Vohumana, he was transported to the court of the wise Lord and the holy immortals. It is said that when he came to 24 feet of these, the light was so intense that his body cast no shadow. In this state, Zarathustra began to ask questions to seek the truth. His questions were answered. He returned to this world, transformed into the prophet of the good religion. He preached his new teachings to all and everyone. But for 10 years, no one understood him. Finally, a cousin heard and understood the meaning of his prophet's words. After 10 years, the gate was opened to the world. Zarathustra entered the court of King Vistashpa, where he gained the confidence of the queen Eutiosa. She and her husband ruled a small realm around the Oxus River. They listened to the teachings of the prophet with increasing interest. A story is told, known as the Legend of Grain, about Zarathustra and King Vistashpa, and how the prophet taught him. One day the king was traveling through his country, and he came upon a beautiful garden. He inquired of his minister what this place was. The minister replied, "It was the garden of the wise man known as Zarathustra." The king entered and saw groups of people discussing wondrous things freely. The king had Zarathustra brought before him, and he wanted to ask him for the answers to questions none of his priests could give him. Zarathustra came before the king, but immediately asked to be excused to engage in his work in the garden, which could not be neglected. The king was so very annoyed with this and demanded some sort of instruction from the wise man. Zarathustra reached into his satchel and presented the king with an ear of grain. He told the king that the grain had been his teacher and that it could teach him many things. The king departed, and when he got back to his place, he put the grain in a golden box. Daily he would open the box and stare at the grain, hoping for it to speak to him or somehow magically teach him secrets. But no such events transpired. Highly annoyed, the king returned to the sage some months later with the grain in the golden box and demanded to know what the grain was supposed to teach him. Zarathustra asked what would have happened if, instead of putting the grain in the golden box, he would have planted it so that it could receive food and water. Together the king and sage reflected upon the possibilities. The grain had to be removed from the box and planted in the earth so that good things could flow toward it. The king realized that he had to change his environment and ground himself so that the good things of nature and the spiritual world could flow freely toward him, so that he could grow in knowledge and understanding. The answers he sought were within him. He would listen, not just hear. He would observe, not just see. Instead of demanding answers from others, he would develop his own mind and arrive at the answers through insight. Of course, the king's old priests and advisors did not sit idly by. They plotted relentlessly against the prophet and even tried to have him executed. At one point, the king had Zarathustra imprisoned, but he was released and exonerated when the prophet magically cured the king's favorite horse. Zarathustra cured each of the 4 limbs of the horse in exchange for 4 promises from the king. First, the king should convert to the good religion. Second, the king should do the same. The king's son should do the same. Third, that the queen should also be converted. And finally, that the king should execute those who attempted to have him executed. These events are said to have occurred in the prophet's 42nd year. With royal patronage, the teachings of Zarathustra and the good religion spread throughout the region. The practical results from following the teachings of the prophet were manifested and planted a growing seed in the Iranian people and beyond. These teachings were ethics. Zarathustra speaks repeatedly of the centrality of the 7 creations, and the most especially the soul, the ox, by which he means the whole of the beneficial animals creation of humanity. Those persons and things which benefit the 7 creations are praised, and those persons and things which harm them are condemned. Mankind is exhorted to seek the good mind and to be guided by it toward good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Those who have been enlightened are exhorted to teach the good religion to others. Yasht 33.2. Agency of mankind. Humanity is the chief active agents in the entire making of existence. Yasht 48, 30.9. The process of seeking enlightenment and receiving the material rewards of the enlightenment is not intended to serve the needs of the individual for his own for her own sake. Rather, the strength and endurance are provided that the individual may become